Git on the front line. So in this talk, I'm going to talk about Git. What I do most of the time is working on open source projects. I have a few open source in the Python language. One is Python Eve, another one is Python Cerberus, and there are more, of course. But a lot of my colleagues call me the weirdo in the company because I do both Python and C# and many other languages. I enjoy doing different things in on different stacks. I also have open source project in C#, by the way, which are more Italian-centered, so not very relevant right now. But of course, working on open source projects and also distributed with distributed teams, I get to see a lot of people working with version control. Two different languages, totally different stacks, but if there is something in common between them is the version control. No matter if you're working in C#, in Elixir, in whatever you want to work with, you probably are going to use some version control system. And as you all know, since we are sitting here, nowadays when we talk about version control, we are talking about Git most of the time. So on my open source project, I get a lot of pull requests, and that means that I get in touch with a lot of people which are using Git. And also on my office activity, I have a lot of colleagues working on Git. What I notice is there is a lot of diversity in the Git usage, which is fine because one of the features in Git is let's call it flexibility. You have many ways to achieve different goals, and that's fine. But there are a few probably best practices that you should probably try to, I believe, strive for somehow. Now, since there are many ways to achieve the same result, these are not going to go to be the things you should be doing. This is what I usually do in my own work. I thought it would be interesting for you to see what I do, how I do that, and maybe you can then decide if these practices, these things are of interest to you, or if they aren't, maybe you will find something useful anyway out of all this stuff. So we're going to look at Git workflows very quickly. This is not a talk about the workflows, but I find interesting to mention them. We are going to talk about aliases and rebases, reflog, usage of the reflog, and if we have time, a few more high level or low level, depending on your perspective, things. So, Git workflow. There are a couple of workflows which are very well known. You probably already studied them, so I'm not going to spend a lot of time on this. One is Git flow, which was coded by my friend Vincent Driesen. He's a very super nice guy, very smart. He is now the CTO at Git Prime. And yes, it basically centered around the idea of having one master branch for which is production ready, and one develop branch, which is basically where all the development stuff gets merged. There are supporting branches, and in general, it is a very it offers a very good and elegant mental mode of your work. I find it good for packaged software, maybe, because it requires a lot of effort in managing branches and stuff like that. If you have a slow release cycle, it's a very good flow, and I suggest you give a look at it. If you don't know it, there is a link at the bottom of the slide. The other one you probably already know about is GitHub Flow, which is also very well known, and it is more modern compared to Git Flow. And yes, it is much simpler. You have a master branch. You branch out of master branch where you need to work on a feature, and then when you are ready, you submit a pull request, and maybe you ask for code reviews. And when everything is fine, you merge on master and you go in production. Actually, if you check on the GitHub website right now, their suggestion is that you actually deploy from the branch and not from master, actually. So there are variations, but yes, this is a good flow if you have a much faster release cycle. So basically websites or kind of web services, stuff like that. in general, I would say the GitHub flow is more easy to follow, more flexible, probably also easier to pick up if you never used any kind of workflow. But the whole point of mentioning these two flows is that, in my opinion, you should kind of build your own. Yesterday, if any of you was listening to the Stack Overflow guy speaking about how they do Stack Overflow, they actually work on branch directly, commit on branch, and just deploy every time somebody merges something on the master branch. So they very rarely use branches at all. They only do that when they want to test the look of the website on a private, on a staging server or something like that. So as you can see, totally different approach. Works very well for a super big company. So really, what really is important is get some kind of workflow into your team and try to make all your teammates follow that workflow. Find the right one which is right for you. These are very good options from which you can start, and then you can adapt and again start working on what is really useful for your use case, which is probably not the GitHub use case and not even the Stack Overflow use case or my use case. Right. How many of you use or ever used Git aliases in their work? Okay, so quite a few, but not too many, which is the point of speaking about aliases, because in my experience, very few people actually know about aliases, or if they do, they don't use them as much as they should be used, because I find them to be very important in speeding up and streamlining my work. I work every day, of course, like all of you, with Git, and I merge a lot of pull requests, I do a lot of commits, I switch branches basically continuously, and I'm always doing the same thing. One thing people say to me about Git, especially if they're coming from S1 or other version control system, is there are so many options, so many commands, and so many, how do I do this or that, etc. Now imagine if you are doing maybe 100, 200, 300 of these commands every day, every single day. You every time are going to repeat the same command over and over, and don't repeat yourself. So if you are doing a lot of commits with the no forced forward option, why don't you make an alias out of that? So you will be much faster in doing that. So let's look at a few aliases. Some are very simple, very straightforward. You probably are already using them, so I'm going to skim on them. And some others maybe are more interesting. You never saw them, hopefully. And you can bring something home. The very first one is st. I call it this way, but you can call it however you want. It is just a Git status, but with a few options. So short, S stands for short here in this option, and B is for show me the branch name. So very concise output here, just tell me what's changed, and more importantly, when I type the command, I only type st and not status. Why? Because I'm typing this command probably thousands of times every single day. Oh, by the way, here you see how you enable this alias in your own Git configuration. If you want to use it, you just have to type this into the command line, and you get the shortcut out for you. So here we have last. This is very basic. Just give me the last commit I made or somebody else made on the repo. This is because we don't want to look. We always do git log, which fills up the screen, and then we can see what was before the log. Why? Most often we just need, or often we need to just look what is been done lately. Of course, you can expand on this, make sure last two, last three, whatever. This is probably one of the most useful and most simple and obvious. Now, if you think about it, how many times do you check out to a new branch? Probably dozens of times every day. Shortcut it. Make a CO check out to my branch. Git wants you to do a lot of branches. If you aren't branching every day or very often, you probably are using Git not in the right way. So if you find yourself just using the master branch and committing to it, think about it. There's probably something going wrong with your workflow. And then probably even more useful is check out and branch. So basically in this command we are checking out to a new branch, creating a new branch, and then checking out to it. You can do this in Git itself by git checkout -b, but again it's very long and time consuming. We will see all these commands, or most of these commands, in a live coding session, maybe in a few minutes, if hopefully we have time. This is another command I use all the time. How many times do you commit and then find out the message is not correct? You want to fix that. So you can do go git commit -- amend, and you can fix it. But again, takes time. Git amend. Sorry, I did a mistake. I want to fix it. And then the most precious, in my case, fix up. So this, what this does is I already committed, but I forgot something. So I add new code, and then the commit message is fine. I only needed to add new stuff to the commit. Git fix up. So basically adds the stuff in the staging area, commits it, and adds it to the last commit. So these are probably 2 or 3 Git operations in one command. I use this all the time because I always forget, I don't know, to update the change log for the commit I just did or something like that. Fix up. Really easy, quick, streamline. Again, this is the point of all these shortcuts. Unstage. This is also very common in my case because I'm an old fart. I tend to forget things or to go too fast. So I add something to the staging area, and then I realize that I still need some more work to be done on that. I can unstage it really quick. The command is git reset head. Well, unstage is much simpler. I can add a file name. If I have multiple files on the staging area, I can add the name of the file I want to unstage, or just a simple git unstage will unstage everything and allow me to keep working on the stuff which is not quite ready yet. But when I put something in the staging area, and then we might have a discussion on why Git has a staging area in the first place, especially with the people coming from SVN, sometimes I still want to see what's in the staging area, because Git, we all know that Git gives us the diff command. The diff command tells us what's not in the staging area, what has changed since the last commit. But if we have something in the staging area, how do we get to see that? Because we want to make sure that we have everything staged and ready for the commit. Basically, we don't unless we use the --cache option. Again, this is actually very common, at least in my workflow. Again, this is my workflow. And I just have a diff cache, diff c, which tells me what I have in the staging area instead of that in the working area. And then there are the mistakes when we want to undo something. So for example, R1 is undo last commit and keep the changes. So I did a commit actually too fast, too quick. I still have to work to do on that commit, so let's undo that commit. Well, R1 is all it is needed in my case because I made this shortcut. Of course, also I have R2, R3, but that's quite obvious. And then there is the most dangerous of all, undo last commit and discard changes. This is basically, okay, I messed up, this commit must go, and I don't want to undo the commit. I keep the stuff, the code in my staging area. I just want to reset everything to the previous commit. So that's how you do that in Git, but you can shortcut it to just a simple 3 charters command with this, git erase 1. And again, this is very common for me. So you want to commit git and you have a short message for your commit. You don't want a full editor to come up and allow you to write the code. You can do that in line. If you didn't know, you can do that in Git with the --m option. But CM, this shortcut, does something else, adds everything which is in the working area, including untracked files. So if I have a new file, which for Git is unknown, it will get added to the commit together with the message, which is something that you usually do, but with -am, which is another option. I use this all the time, again. Okay, since now we have seen pretty straightforward shortcuts, just saving time. Now we are seeing shortcuts which are actually changing the workflow. For example, this command is very precious to me, is whip work in progress. So very often I'm working on something, and then a colleague calls me on Slack or whatever, and wants me to work on something else. We all know that in this case, the standard practice is using the stash in Git. You git stash, and your working area gets stashed. You can go and work on something else. The problem I have with stash is that it is common to all branches in your project. So if I have several branches and I want to stash this stuff and then go to another branch and then come back to the branch and pop it up, pop the work back again, stash works. But if what if I want to, for example, ask a colleague for code reviewing the work I'm on, for example. So stash is just local. I can't show it to anybody. First. Second, it is general. If I go to another stash and I stash pop, I'm resuming the work I was doing on another branch, which is often not ideal if you're working on several branches. So I came up, actually not me, but Phil Hack came up with this very nice trick. So whip, what it does is adding all changes to a new commit, and it adds a message for the commit, a name, if you will, which is whip work in progress. When I do this, I get a new commit for free into my branch, and then I can check out elsewhere. Why this is useful? Because I can, for example, submit this code to a colleague on GitHub for a pull request. It is just a work in progress. What do you think about it? And most importantly, when I get back to this branch, I have my code right there, not confused with the other branches, and all I need to do is a git undo, which we will see in a moment, which is another shortcut. Git undo will just undo the last commit and keep everything in the working area. So basically, git whip, switch to another branch, work on it. Eventually, even git push, if what I do usually is push. Also, since it is a private branch, a local branch, I can push it remotely, so I have a backup. This is another reason why I don't like stash. Stash is local. If something goes wrong on my machine, I lost my work. While if I whip and push it on my local branch, it is also backed up. And then when I get back, I undo and restart working exactly where I was before doing the whip. I also have a save, which is exactly the same as whip. The difference is that this also adds untracked files, while whip only adds what's on the working area, what's tracked by Git. And then we have undo, which basically does what I was telling you. So when I get back to the stash, to the branch, Git undo. Very easy, very straightforward, very powerful in my opinion compared to stash. And if you think about it, very obvious. It is just a commit. Makes sense, right? It makes sense for me anyway. Okay, this is actually I don't use it very often, but it is still nice to have at hand. I call it wipe. What it does is add all changes to a commit and then wipe that commit. Get rid of it. Why? Because maybe in 2 days I want to go back at that work which I deleted for any reason. Maybe it wasn't a bad idea after all. Now, if we delete a commit, it is lost, right? But with this, I delete, and then I can go back to the reflog, which we will see in a few moments if you don't know about it, and reset it, and basically pull it up again. What it does, it is actually just giving me this very visible commit message. So when I go back to my reflog, I can see where is the commit which I deleted, which is supposed to be gone, but I can undo it very quickly. Think of this like a trash can for your work. So you can always go back and pull it up again. It's not gone. Of course, the same thing happens if you go and just delete a regular commit. But the problem is when you look at the reflog, where is it? Which is the commit I deleted? This wipe save point, capital, very simple to find and pop up if I need it. So as you see, these few shortcuts are actually kind of influencing my workflow. If I start using them, I'm kind of adding new features to Git. It is not just about shortcutting. It's actually, think of it like a macro. You actually are adding new features. Now, maybe not many of you know that Git has a grep functionality included, comes with that functionality, with that feature, and it is actually super fast. So if you're used to doing greps, so lookups in your working folder, you might want to try Git grep, which is very much faster than the grep offered by Linux or Bash for Windows or whatever you're using. So here I made a macro for this. Git g will just look for, in this example, for event hooks, and this is the places where event hooks has a match in my subtree. Very nice. I use it all the time. And then there is Git tree, which is very simple. It is just a nice way of looking at my log, and we will see this in a few minutes. This basically is a log with a tree which tells me the structure of the work, which commit was in which branch, etc. Very useful, especially if you are working with a large and distributed team. We will get to this in a few moments. These, I don't use them very often, but I included them because they're actually useful. So Git publish, what this does is publishing your branch to a remote, to origin, basically, and setting the branch, the remote branch as a tracking branch. So basically, it is the shortcut for what you usually do: push -u origin or -- set upstream. I think is the command. Again, most likely when you do a new branch, you probably are going to push it somewhere, maybe in your local remote backup repo or something. So why don't you automate it? Just git publish will just make your local branch on which you are working go remote and set your tracking branch, so everything is done for you very simply. And the other thing you do on a local branch, on a personal branch often, is deleting the branch and then deleting from remote. Two operations. By the way, Git has a very strange syntax for that. If you want to delete a remote branch, is git push semicolon and then the branch name. So again, shortcut it to unpublish. Very simple. And this is a command I use every day, but because I'm the maintainer of open source projects. So what happens is that when I pull up a pull request, maybe 2, 3, 4 pull requests, and then I merge them, and then I have a lot of branches sitting around in my repo. Once they are merged, why keep them around? Just delete them. I can do that hand by hand, branch by branch, but with a simple macro, I can just, and see I'm using grep here, I just use one single command. It will delete all the branches which are already merged to master, and I don't need them anymore anyway. So just one simple command. And this is a command I want to show you because it is just firing up the Git configuration, which is where all your Git AC fires up the Git configuration file. And as you can see, the Git configuration, all your aliases, for those of you who haven't using aliases until now, or your aliases actually go into this file. So here you can find them. And what I did is pushing this file on GitHub, so you can go and actually give a look at my dot file, which is at this address, which you can't read actually, but it is github.com/Nicola Iarocci .dot file. So you go there, you download my configuration. So if any of these aliases you believe are useful to your workflow, you can just copy them, or also if you want, what I actually have here is an install script. You can look at it. This allows me to use when for example, I SSH to a new machine, to a remote server, or go to somewhere else for some consulting, I don't know, for anything. I just clone this, launch the install script, and I get all my aliases ready on whatever machine I am right now. So you can look at that script and see if it is useful for you. I also have in the same repo, I have my Vim configuration file, for example. So when I launch the install script on a different machine, I also get all my Vim tricks for free, even on that machine. So it might be useful for you if you want to check it out. So how many of you know about Git rebase, and how many of you actually use it every day? Okay, we can skip Git rebase then. No, not really. Maybe half of you are using rebases, and half of you aren't. Now I find that rebase is probably the most powerful tool you have at your disposal with Git. You should be using it, I believe, strongly. And I'm going to give you a little demo on how it works. Hopefully we have time. How it works and why it is important. I thought that just speaking about that wouldn't make it justice. So let's see if I can. Okay. Can you read what I'm writing there? Okay. So there is much time left. I created a new folder. I initialized Git, so I'm ready to work. Let's assume that we want to write a documentation for something. So let's create a README file, which is our documentation file. It's a markdown file, and then sorry, CM. First, as you can see, I'm using one of my aliases here for commit dash dash etc. So very simple. Git status st. I'm on master, no changes. Let me go back and then back in. Okay, so we get the name of the branch on the line, on the command line. Let's maybe add a title, right? Git st. You can see I have a file changer, of course. I can check it out. There is just the title. You know that the good idea with Git is commit very often, atomic, small commits. So let's commit that we added a title. Now let's imagine one girl, one boy working on two different chapters of this documentation. So let's check out and branch chapter 2. As you can see, I created a new branch and I checked out to it with just 3 type strokes. And then let's see that this girl here is, I don't know, writing one chapter. So chapter 2, paragraph 1. Nope. Okay, let's commit this. Chapter 2, paragraph 1. Okay? Let me go back to the master branch. Now, I find that a lot of people don't know that there is a shortcut for that. You don't need to check out to master. You can just do this as you would do with a folder on Linux, for example, on Bash. You can just go cd dash to go back to the previous branch. Okay? If you didn't know, now you know, which is fine. Let's create a new branch. Chapter 1, which I forgot. This is no, I did something wrong here. Yes, git co. Sorry, with checkout you use dash, of course, and I go back to the previous branch. Now let me create chapter 1. Now we have the boy. The boy is doing the same. He's writing paragraph 1. So abbiamo chapter 1, paragraph 1. And then commit. Right? Now, of course, this guy here has just his chapter, and the girl on the other side is working on the other chapter, right? Let's go back to the girl and another chapter. We need this because for a reason. I know it looks like I'm wasting my time here, but hopefully I'm actually not wasting any time or your time. So chapter 2, paragraph 2. Commit. And let's switch back to chapter 1. And let's add a second paragraph here as well. Okay, so we have 2 chapters. Every chapter has 2 commits on it. If I go back to master, my readme file only has a title. Now it is the moment when I need to merge this work back on master, right? Because the best practice is that you merge on master the work of your colleagues. Now, if we use a normal merge, which is what half of the people here in this room usually do, I can do that. Of course, it will work just fine. So git merge and noff chapter 1. NoFF is an option which tells Git I want to keep track of which branch the commits I'm merging are coming from, even in the final, when the merge is done. Otherwise, Git will do a forward merge, and you will lose information about the branch from which these commits are coming from. I'm merging here, very simple. I look at the log, I have my chapter 1 chapters. Now I need to merge the chapter 2. There is a conflict, of course, because we were working on 2 different chapters. You can see with ST that we have an unmerged path there. So let's fix this. Like this, very simple again. And then add and commit. Done. All right? If I now go and look at README, we have all our chapters. The merge is done. I can publish. But if I go and look at the log here, we see, unfortunately, we don't have a lot of room or screen space, but we see that the commits, they are just coming in a chronological order, right? So we have chapter 2, paragraph 2, then chapter 1, paragraph 2, and then we have the 2 merges. These are the effect of using the NoFF option. Now, this is fine. The project is working, is complete. We have everything in our master branch, so the goal is met. But what if a new guy joins the team, for example, because he needs to write chapter 3, and he wants to see and look at what happened in the project? Now, looking at this log file, and most importantly, looking at the tree, now we see that the tree shortcut in action here. Yes, it is probably parsable, understandable, but I don't find it very ideal, right? You see a lot of crossing paths, etc. This is where the rebase comes in hand. And the second very important and strong point, the main reason, another reason why doing a rebase is important, actually not, it is not because of the rebase, you can do this even with a normal merge, is that if you did notice, when I was merging on master, I had to solve a conflict. Now, most of the time in a distributed team, who is merging on master is not the guy who wrote the code in the first place. The code coming from a branch is from someone maybe living in Japan, and he added a new feature to my project, which has, I don't know, 10,000 rows. I'm merging it. All tests were green. I want to merge it, but I don't have the knowledge about the logic of the code I'm merging. And I am supposed to fix a conflict, which is quite often quite complex and dangerous, while the guy in Japan exactly knows what he's been trying to do, and so he is the guy who should probably try to fix the conflict, because he knows what his code is doing and why he's doing that, etc., etc., etc. So let's look at a different workflow here. And let's look at the ref log, because I want to undo something. Now, the ref log in Git, for if you don't know about it, is just a log of every single operation in Git you've been doing. So here we see that it's basically a history of what has been done. We see with the merge, first, second, and the checkout. I want to go back to this point in time when I did the checkout to master and I still had to do the 2 merges. It is very simple now. Git reset hard, and I go and pick my checkout point. This is the hash. Bam. No merge anymore. I went back in time to before the merge, right? If you don't know about the React log, you should go and check it out because it is very interesting. It allows you the superpowers in Git, basically. Okay, let's do this, something different now. Let's merge chapter 1 because that one was fine. Well, not really, but sorry. Let's go now to chapter 2, and let's say git rebase master, which means take all my new commits in this branch and put them on top of whatever is on master, basically. Okay? It is a merge, but it is different because it is going to keep all the commits on my branch on the top of whatever is coming in from master in this point. So I am sure that my code is always on the top of the history of Git. There is a conflict. Of course there is, because it is basically the same situation we had with the normal merge. We go and fix it. As you can see, I have only one paragraph here. This is because I'm merging the first of the two commits I had on this specific branch. Then I add my changes and git rebase continue. Right, git log. Now I solved my conflict, and as you can see, my chapter 2 commits are still at the top of the history. The chapter 1 commits with its merge from master are below my new commits. So my commits on my branch, on which I'm responsible about, are on the top of the history. Of course, now when I say to my master, hey guy, you can merge my work, I'm sure that he won't have any conflict to deal with because I already did that for him. So git merge let's look at this git tree. You see how this actually looks like a tree. If the next guy comes in and looks at this, I believe he will find it very clear what happened, who did what, why, etc. And me, the maintainer, did not have to deal with any conflict at all, right? I'm rushing because we are late. I believe how many minutes we have? Yes, we are late. So rebase, very important. Look at it, study it, and there is a second rebase which we don't have time to look at. It is actually always the same command, but you can also rewrite the history on your local branch. I had the demo already, but we don't have the time, so let's just look at it. There is another option which is called re, which is very powerful. I can demo it, but it is basically, hey, Git, remember the conflict solutions and apply them for me the next time they happen. This is very, very useful, especially if you're a maintainer and you're working with merging stuff coming from all around the world, because probably you're going to get the same conflict over and over. Git will remember how you solved that conflict, and the next time the same conflict happens, it will just solve the conflict for you, and it will propose you the changes, and you can accept them. There is a link at the bottom of this slide. When you download them, you can go and actually read the documentation about it. I suggest you give a look at it and try it, experiment with it. It is very nice. And then, since we have we had Salvatore here, what is the nickname again? Antires. It's written right there. This is a script he sent me a while ago when I asked him for help on something. So the idea here is that this script is basically a script, which a bash script, which will tell me which commits are on one branch and aren't on another. So before merging long-running branches, for example, it is super powerful and very useful to go and look at which commits are on a branch and which are in this other branch, and they haven't been merged. So I can pick the single commits that I need to merge. We don't have time to look at it, but it is very nice. But the point here is not use this script, is you can actually write scripts. If you are finding yourself again repeatedly doing the same things in Git, try to automate it. Salvatore did this script, and I'm abusing it every day. So you probably have something you're doing, and you probably can try to automate it if you have the knowledge. If you don't have, go and study it. I see coding in general as not as a software engineering skill, but as a craftsmanship skill. I consider myself a software craftsman, like an artisan, a craftsman. I use tools, and these tools should be sharpened. I sharpen my tools every single day. This is what I've been doing with Git right now. And basically, the whole point of this talk is not about Git and the aliases or the script from Salvatore, but is sharpen your tools every single day. If you are repeating yourself, think about it. Somebody probably have been doing the same, and there is a shortcut, and they can Google for it and find a solution. So a few suggestions. Pick a workflow. Feel free to adapt it to your use case, and make sure your team is all adhering to that workflow. Use the aliases. They are very powerful. You can use mine. You go and clone my dot files, or you find your own aliases. But automate, again, what you are doing every single day. It will also streamline your workflow, because it is much simpler to type cm instead of commit dash add, etc., etc. Use rebase, because it is cool, actually. Not as hard as you thought, as you saw. It is not that hard. And I recommend you also look at what it means to rebasing your local branch and changing the history. It is very interesting and powerful. And keep learning. Keep trying to perfect your tools, which are using every single day. Consider building your own scripts, for example, building your aliases, etc. I do that every single day. I spend 1 hour, 1 hour and a half every early morning studying. And that's it. If you want to get in touch with me, I'm Nicola Iarocci on GitHub. You can go on my website or fire me an email if you have doubts or some script or alias or whatever. You will get the links for the dot files. And I believe that's all. Thank you. And if you have any question, maybe if you have time for a QA. Okay, 43 minutes. Thanks.